Modesto City School Board's 1,433rd regular meeting on September 30th, 2019. This meeting is now called to order. In closed session, the board accepted the resignation of a permanent classified employee. The vote was unanimous. Terms of the resignation are available in the Human Resources Department during regular business hours. The board approved a resolution to initiate disciplinary action against a permanent certificated employee. The vote was unanimous. The board directed staff to notify the employee. The board gave direction to legal counsel regarding potential litigation and pending litigation. There was no other reportable action. That the meeting is called to order. Please stand and join me for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Our pledgers were here early, and so they did the pledge before we did recognition earlier, so we'll just do our pledge solo here. That salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Back to agenda. I want to call your attention to the fact that if you wish to address the board during the period for public comment on a subject not on the agenda, you must complete a public presentation request card and submit it to the board president prior to period for public comment. Only those who have submitted cards will be called upon to speak, and no cards will be accepted after the period has begun. Every person who wishes to address the board must fill out a card. You will find cards in the lobby. Brings us to recognitions. Oh, actually, we've changed the order here. Superintendent's welcome and announcements.
Thank you, President Walker. First, I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight and coming in support of your students in your community. I want to say just a few things. I've been out at all of the high schools and junior highs and many of the elementaries, and will begin my rotation with all the elementaries in this next couple weeks. I see a lot of wonderful things going on at the sites. We've got some solid instruction. The schools are very welcoming. There's a lot of positive customer service. There just really is a lot of positive energy from the time I walk out of my car all the way up to the principal's office and the front office and in the classrooms. So there's a lot of great things going on there. I am very excited to announce that we have 5 students who are semifinalists for the National Merit Scholarship Program. These students represent Modesto High, Enoch, and Bayer High School, so congratulations to those 5, and we wish you all the luck as you continue to go through that process. And then lastly, I'd like to invite you out to the Modesto Marching Band Invitational at Johansson this Saturday. It starts at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I did have the opportunity to go to the Invitational last year, and I was absolutely amazed at all the hard work, dedication, talent of the parents, the students, and the staff. It really is amazing at all the work that they do to be able to participate in the competition. So if you're interested in that event, that they would welcome you. It starts at 4 o'clock. Thank you.
Okay, and with that, it brings us to A8. Report of meetings attended by Board of Education members. Trustee Newman.
All right, since our last board meeting, I've been out at 4 events. I went to Modesto High's Back to School Night, which was great to see all the students, see all the teachers, and the welcome back that Mr. Manning did in the auditorium was great. The Harvest Lunch to raise money for the FFA. And then Power of the Purse with the United Way, raising money for social services and that benefit our students in our county. And then also, it was, I guess, about a week ago, Modesto High's homecoming. So they got to see all the floats. And I just encourage you as a member, if you have an opportunity to go out and look at some of our high school students' homecoming games. And if that's your high school, go out and take a look. And it's a great opportunity to interact with one of our schools and to see the great work of our students.
Trustee Marks.
must be September. There's lots of things going on. So also attended the Modesto High back to school night, but I also attended as the Dr. Parker committee, right. I was just trying to think of the name of what we're called, but they're also the Parents Leading Change, and recruited some parents to help join that. And so that was a fun night to sit at a table and talk to parents. And then we also had, and some of the Dr. Parker committee people, clergy council, superintendent and I and Krista also attended the clergy council meeting at Martin Luther King, I'm going to call it the King Kennedy Collaborative Center. I can't think of what it's called now, but new name. You probably know what it's called. And then went to the Ag Luncheon, as many of you did. It was a fundraiser for FFA in partnership with the Chamber of Commerce. I also did a CSBA Delegate Assembly meeting, and we were encouraged to contact our legislators and tell them our concerns about a late start because it's on the governor's desk. And we've been contacting our legislators, encouraging them to help us have local control and be able to do that on our own and not have the state tell us what to do. Many of us attended Dr. O meeting and got an update on what he's doing for our district and interviewing the parents and students and what's happening with that. And then I also was asked by CSBA to go out to Lammersville and for a Golden Bell evaluation. They had submitted a request, and it was on walking and talking and how their staff works together with the administrators and teachers, and they spend an entire day. They do this 3 times a year. They visit classrooms, and they do a walking, talking tour and help encourage their parents, their teachers, on some how to do well in their instructional time. But it's been so successful. They are the highest performing district in San Joaquin County, and they've been doing this. This is, I think, their 5th year. So I got to evaluate that. So that was very interesting for me to go see. So it's been a busy month.
Thank you. Trustee West?
It's been great to be on the school campuses. I was able to visit El Vista School and Lakewood and see all the great things that are going on there. Johansson Back to School Night, Dr. Aquanafa at Downey High School was interesting to hear his report. And I was very excited to be a part of the ribbon cutting ceremony for Connecting Waters Charter School. It was wonderful to be on their new campus and see the work that's going on. It happens to be on the grounds where I used to go to church, and so it was great to see all of the new things that are going on and the great things that our students are going to be able to be a part of on that campus now.
Thank you. Trustee Irvin?
Yes, attended the Harvest Luncheon as well. Also, I got a chance to attend the HBCU College Fair with our students, the Historically Black College University Fair at Edison High School in Stockton. Our students from Modesto City Schools, Davis, Enox, Johansson, and Bayer attended there. And if students brought their transcripts and their SAT scores, they could get on-the-spot scholarships at university. And so we had 4 Davis High School students receive almost $1.2 million in scholarship offers from universities that day based on their SAT, ACT scores, and their transcripts. So that was good. This from one school, Davis students. So our students are getting recognized by universities and for their academic work based on their scholarship attainment. And also attended the Dr. O presentation, which was very, very good update on his progress and his work.
Thank you, sir. Trustee Lopez?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out. Attended the harvest dinner? Luncheon. And then also attended the Dr. O presentation. Very enlightening and very a lot of information. And I'm looking forward to what he's going to bring in our next presentation. But I do want to take this chance to invite everyone out to the West Modesto Community Collaborative sock hop that they're having this Friday at 6 p.m. You can look up West Modesto Community Collaborative and look at all the details. It's a they're raising funds for mental health. That's what they do in the community. So check it out. And those are my announcements.
Everybody covered. I also was at the Harvest Luncheon. Also went to the presentation by Dr. Okanafua at Davis, or Downey. Enoch's back to school night. And since you're inviting and you mentioned it, if you want to see Fridays at the marching band competition, it's been up since last year, and there will be 2 bands from Bay Area communities, both of them close to 300 members. You want to see 300 students wide marching and playing music, then there'll be an opportunity to do that Saturday afternoon, and it's a lot of fun, and it's just something I've enjoyed doing for the last 3 or 4 years. So feel free to come out to Johansson and enjoy the show. With that, takes us to A9 recognitions. A9-1 MCS Heroes, Bret Hart Elementary. I believe I'm turning this over to Ms. Noonan.
Yes.
And Trustee Lopez is going to join you.
Yes. So thank you, everyone, for coming tonight, and thank you to the board members for allowing this time to do our recognition. We have 2 recognitions tonight. The first one, I'm really proud to introduce Principal Marla Conte from Bret Hart Elementary, and she is going to be presenting and recognizing her attendance patrol. And she has several families who are here tonight, and I'm super happy that they were able to make it. One thing that their efforts did is they worked really closely to increase student attendance at Bret Hart Elementary, and this was actually from last school year. But I think what Principal Conte has implemented will definitely be a great example for other schools as well. So if Principal Conte would like to go ahead, she has a microphone, she'll go ahead and introduce the parents, and then Trustee Lopez will come down to have a photo with everyone as well.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing us to present these special members of Attendance Patrol with the certificate. As you can see, there are many of us, so I'll keep the certificates. And I know nobody really wants to hear from me. We want to hear from the people who were the brains behind the operation. So this was an effort to increase the parent involvement at meetings and events we have at the site, and also to increase scholar attendance at our school. So at a Cookies with Conte meeting, parents decided, well, there must be something more that we can do to help with attendance. So we came up with this parent partnership through Attendance Patrol, and for the month that it was implemented in 2019, March 2019, we were ranked #1 in the entire district for our attendance, and we used to be at the very bottom of that list. So these parents were, yes, thank you. We were so excited about that, so empowered, so excited about our success, the parents decided to continue it this year and to start in October. So we're going to be starting in October, and I'm going to hand it over to one of our parents so that you can hear a little bit about Attendance Patrol and how that functions.
Thank you, Ms. Conte. First, as parents of students at Bret Hart, we would like to thank you all for this recognition. It really means a lot to us. We have listened to our school staff and learned that a lot of students were not attending school on a timely or daily basis. As concerned parents, we got together in meetings with our school staff, listened to one another, and decided to come up with Attendance Patrol. We had one great month of everyone coming to school on a timely manner and on a daily basis. And for this, we are very grateful to those parents that took the time to listen and to understand the concerns that we had for their children. So as we move forward in this new school year, 2019-2020, we hope that this continues and we continue to help our students come to school daily, as we know this is very important for their future education. Thank you, students, parents, staff at Bret Hart, and the district for making this recognition possible.
So Trustee Lopez, would you like to join them for a photo and to hand out the certificates? And we've made certificates for each of the parents. I don't know, Principal Conte, do you want to read them off? Okay.
Not all parents were able to attend our Attendance Patrol recognition, but we'll announce their names, so we'll clap for them even if they are not here. Soriel Marroquin. Tony Perez, Guille Rivera, Rosa Enriquez, Mirna González, Elisa Camarena, Araceli McCann, Yara Victorio, and Jesus Salceda.
Great, thank you, everyone. You're definitely MCS heroes, so thank you. We're glad to recognize you for your efforts. Excellent. Thank you. Nice job. All right, and our next recognition, I'm going to invite up Rebecca Harrington. She's a local community advocate, and she's going to speak on the recognition of Hispanic Heritage Month. But I did want to give you just a little bit of background. Hispanic Heritage Week actually started in 1968 under President Lyndon B. Johnson, but then it was enacted into federal law in mid-August of 1988 as an entire month. And I think it's really important, and Ms. Harrington will speak to this as well, to recognize that Hispanic and Latino heritage and culture, it's quite a woven tapestry throughout our community. And it's very important that we take time to recognize and appreciate the vital roles that everyone plays in the economy, the workforce, and just the diversity that everybody brings to the community. So the official month is September 15th through October 15th, and there are a couple of schools so far that I've heard from. I'm sure there's a lot more who are also doing special events to celebrate and commemorate Hispanic Heritage Month. So Ms. Harrington will come up, and she has some entertainment as well to provide, but go ahead and come up and, yep, to the stage.
Lo que me to be born in Havana, and then I became a singer of songs. They led me to the great mamboleros.
Well, that was just a wonderful taste of our most beautiful and dynamic singer, Celia Cruz, who was from Cuba. My name is Rebecca Ortega Harrington, and I am a longtime member of the community. I was born and raised here in Modesto High, and in the Modesto City school area, and a Modesto High School graduate. Hey. Wearing my red. So, real briefly, National Hispanic Heritage Month begins on September 15 and continues through October 15. The Library of Congress, National Archives and Records Administration, National Gallery of Art, National Park Service, Smithsonian Institution, the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum joined together in paying tribute to the generations of Hispanic Americans who have positively influenced and enriched our nation and society. Many locations around the United States are celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month with events. On October 11th, the Library of Congress's Hispanic Prints and Photographs divisions will showcase a display of recent acquisitions of photography and prints by Latin American and U.S. Latino artists. From the World Atlas, here's a list of our Spanish-speaking countries around the world: Argentina, Bolivia, Chile, Colombia, Costa Rica, Cuba, Dominican Republic, Ecuador, El Salvador, Equatorial Guinea, Guatemala, Honduras, Mexico, Nicaragua, Panama, Paraguay, Peru, Puerto Rico, Spain or España, Uruguay, and Venezuela. On behalf of our community and my many friends of Habla Hispana, we want to thank you for recognizing our community of diverse Spanish-speaking populations. We recently had our first Latin Music in the Plaza on September 20th, and we hope to have many more to come. Our many communities are full of rich and colorful cultural traditions and founded on the mixing of Spain and the indigenous people of South America, Central America, and the Spanish West Indies. So next time you have an opportunity to listen to salsa, merengue, bachata, reggaeton, and you can't help but want to dance, well, just do it. pero que bailas con corazón. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you, Ms. Harrington.
Singing at the Tropicana, my fantasies finally came true.
Love it.
Imagine going to New York.
Thank you so much for that, Ms. Harrington. We appreciate the recognition, and thank you to the board for allowing the proclamation, and you'll see it in the board materials as well. But thank you so much. That's all the recognitions that we have this evening.
Thank you, everyone. And we'll take a quick minute or so because generally folks like to leave after this point. So if you're heading out, this is probably a good time to do that.
Parent power. Sometimes as a school district, we underestimate our parents sometimes. Kind of, yeah. I think if we kind of leaned on them more,
Okay, this brings us to item A10, approval of the consent agenda. I have one change here. We're pulling F3 off. Otherwise, are there any questions from board members regarding the consent agenda? Seeing none, are there any members of the public who wish to speak on an item that is on the consent agenda? Seeing none, back to the board. For Chad to finish, he's looking that up.
is that
So, with that being said, looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda. Adolph? Sure, shoot.
I just want to know why F3 was being asked to be pushed off.
Superintendent, you want to?
So one of the board members had some questions regarding the name. I don't have it directly in front of me. It's like Modesto City Schools something campaign. And it was my understanding that that was part of a title of an initiative that we were moving forward collectively with the city and the county because we've been working together with the census. It was not, so I pulled it and we're going to figure out what that name is and then we'll bring it back at the next board meeting.
All right, so now we're looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Looking for a second. Trustee West. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Passes unanimously. Brings us to A11, approval of the order of discussion and action items. Are there any members of the board who have questions or concerns regarding the order of discussion of action items? Seeing none, to the public, anybody have questions or concerns about the order of discussion or action items? Seeing none, back to the board. Looking for a motion to approve order of discussion and action items.
I'll move approval.
Trustee Marks looking for a second. Trustee Lopez. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Passes unanimously. That brings me to A12, period for public presentation. We'd like to thank you for attending tonight's meeting. Your attendance shows your interest in our schools, and for that, we thank you. The period for public comment is limited to 30 minutes that will be allotted equally to individuals based on the number of request cards submitted. The maximum for any one speaker is 3 minutes. I also want to remind you that if you wish to make a complaint about a specific district employee, You should follow the district's personnel complaint procedure. Copies of that procedure are also available in the lobby, as are agenda copies, which will outline the procedures we'll observe during the period for public comment. The right to address the board does not exempt the speaker from any potential liability for defamation. Before I ask tonight's speakers to address the board, I want to clarify that we may not engage in any discussion on the topic or topics that will be raised, because we are legally obligated to provide the public with advance notice about topics that the board will be discussing. Agendas are intended to inform the public about all topics of discussion and action, so anyone interested in a particular subject on the agenda may attend the meeting and address the board. While we cannot engage in discussion on items not on the agenda, I assure you that we will listen attentively to your comments. Again, I want to thank you for joining us tonight. I have 2 cards, and so each speaker will have 3 minutes. And the first one I have is Ms. Harrington again. Welcome back.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, members of the board, superintendent. It's been a while since I've been here. I bet you guys are happy. I always come up with good things, though. First of all, I just want to tell everyone, thank you so much. Minnesota City Schools has been now going on this 4th year, a huge supporter of our 100% Free to the Community event, Dia de los Muertos. And if you look back here, we have the Minnesota City Schools logo on here. And I want to thank, first of all, Mady Herrera has been very instrumental in helping us here and helping make everything happen. She has put to use her former drill sergeant skills to get my volunteers and out there and doing things and just moving along. It's just amazing. And I can't begin to tell you how much that has helped. Last year for me was a very difficult year. Some of you who know me personally know that I am dealing with cancer, and unfortunately cancer decided to break my arm in August, and that was a very uncomfortable situation. I was running around with a cast, a 90-degree angle cast for about 4 months, because you don't heal well with it. So without help of people like Mady and other peoples in the community, the event just would not have happened. And I think we did such a great deal. We were on point with bringing this event to the community that we were able to get even more sponsors this year. So I'm very proud to tell you that I cannot even equate the value of the sponsorship of Minnesota City Schools and what it brings to the community, because that is invaluable. But I can tell you that we were able to raise over $20,000 to put this event on for the community. It starts at 11 a.m. on Saturday, October 19th. And I know you're getting married. Congratulations. But we're still going to have a party without you. Although we are having mariachi from 11 to 1, which is really wonderful. We have a group coming from Sacramento. We have a lot of local artists. We are also going to be showing the movie Coco again at the State Theater at 12:30 p.m. And it is free. Again, everything is free. We had I can't even begin to tell you how great it is to have all this. We have some HYLC schools here that they have an HYLC in your local high schools that are going to be volunteers. And all volunteer groups are, because we had, again, such a great amount of donations come in, we are donating back to those programs. So they will be getting back money. All of our money is being reinvested into the community and into the events to help the community. We're not, our group, which is the American GI Forum and the other Los Muertos Committee, is under that umbrella. So we're not making any money off of this. Trust me, I'm getting big fat goose eggs. But what I'm getting from this is the absolute energy and the amazing feeling of family and community that comes from it. It has energized me. It has made me feel better. My doctor could not believe that my white blood cell count went up by over 600 points, but I believe it has to do with all the positive interactions in the community. So I thank you all, and I thank our community, and I thank our sponsors, but I also want to tell you that if you have an opportunity, please come out and see us. If you would like to participate in our procession starts at 3 o'clock and we'll be assembling close to the Moxie site at 14th and J. you're welcome to attend there. I know you all know how to get a hold of me, but if you want to just email me direct, you can email me at diadelosmuertosmodesto@gmail and let me know. But I would like to personally invite all of you to attend. And I, again, want to thank you so much for your assistance. And I want to thank Modesto City Schools for always being there on point for us. I know sometimes it's difficult what you do, but we do appreciate the work that you do in our community. And we ask you to keep plugging away and keep working at the best for the best interest of all of our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Harrington. I think it's Levitt or Limit. I'm trying to read it, but welcome.
My name is Lynette Johanna. I am the mother of Dimitri, who attends Fremont. And he's entered kindergarten this year. And so far, I've been very pleased with everything that Fremont does. He's learning so much, and I'm so excited for him. My concern here today is about Roundup that is used in Modesto City Schools. And I think this has been a discussion in years past that I was told with old family members that have gone through Fremont. I don't know if you are aware, but Monsanto has been sued by many different people. And when you are exposed to it enough, you can develop cancer. And those lawsuits have been won, and these people have been granted millions of dollars. I send my son to school because I trust that he's going to be safe, not only with the world that we live in now, but even with chemicals and things in that nature. So I know right now the protocol is to post it if you're lucky to see it. I'm involved with a Fremont Facebook page. That's how I was aware of it, because when you walk in, it's not, it's a piece of paper that's just posted. And then I realized, oh, they still use that. Okay. There's other counties like Mendocino County, for example, because of awareness in the public that they have banned that completely. I think there are alternatives. I and another parent talked to Jason. He's a wonderful man, that the custodian at Fremont, and we volunteered, at least in the kinder area where we know our kids play, that we will pull the weeds ourselves on our own time to keep that away. However, I'm not only here for my son, I want to keep all kids safe. And if it's just something that is not necessary, like my personal opinion is just weeds, but I know you have a responsibility to keep the campus clean and nice looking. And but if there was more awareness or more parent volunteers, I'm sure we can get parents to pull the weeds if that's the biggest concern. So I know, at least in the vicinity of where my son plays, I can keep that from him touching it. I do want to mention that, it's posted on there that the kids need to be washing their hands. And I really don't think that a teacher, no matter how much skill she has, can get every kid to wash their hands every time before they're about to eat or after they play outside. And it's even if they did wash their hands, so their shoes are touching it. They come inside, they sit on the carpet, they're touching their shoes. They're kids, they put their hands constantly in their mouth. So I'm just raising that awareness, and I'm hoping that we can come to some understanding of whether that pesticide is used, if it's only used in the summer when there's no kids. So in this example, it was used Thursday early in the morning before kids got there, because my understanding is you cannot use it when kids are present. And then kids show up, 3 hours later, but it's still there. It's still in the air. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, that brings us to item B1, student representative to the board report.
All right, good evening, everyone. So like a lot of the board members were saying, a lot of the high schools are having their homecoming right now or preparing for it. So that involves like floats and dress up days, and it's like really fun at school on campus, all the positivity and spirit. And with that, like a lot of schools have had their powder puff games, which bring a lot of turnout for both parents and students, and it's a fun event. More on side of the spirit and fun activities. A lot of schools, I wasn't aware, but a lot of schools are having dances already, and like introduction dances. Davis had their Spartan dance, and Enoch's had their Back in Black. So that was really cool to hear. Another thing that I found out, a lot of schools are pretty active on the fundraiser side of things. Downey was collecting donations for cancer awareness, and Grigori did something really cool where they had a $1 donation event where September was Child Cancer Awareness Month, and so they promoted everyone to at least donate $1, and they raised $2,300, which I thought was like really cool, and that's a substantial amount. So that's something I'd like to see more schools do. So hopefully we can spread that around and get that started at more schools. A lot of schools are doing events for the freshmen too, to bring them more, involved in school and feel included. Something I found was really cool is Modesto High did a retreat for their students, for their freshmen. So all the classes can meet the freshmen and the freshmen can feel more involved. It was a 2-day retreat with fun activities, icebreakers, stuff like that. And also the freshmen were taught about school activities, homecoming, school spirit, stuff like that. So I thought that's a great way to get kids involved, because when I was a freshman, I was pretty oblivious to all that stuff. And I thought that was really cool. It's a great way to bring more spirit into the campus. All this stuff that I'm talking about, I learned at Interhigh, and we had our first Interhigh meeting on the 24th, and it was really good. We had all high schools turn out except Elliott, so we'll work on getting them. But yeah, everyone came, and we had a lot of ideas. We talked about concerns and just things that are happening on campus, but obviously these are mostly leadership kids, so we talked about a lot of things that they can implement back at their schools. Specifically the fundraisers, I thought that was really cool, and other spirit events. And as for the Interhigh Council itself, we talked about Tournament of Talent and how we want to make it obviously better than ever, and bringing back some of the events from last year, like Letters of Santa and the Book Buddy program. So we're looking forward to that. But yeah, it was really good. I like the Interhigh meetings. It's fun. So yeah.
Yeah, I would agree the dances are going. I was quite happy that the Enoch's dance went off without a hitch this time, because the last one was a bit more exciting than we wanted.
Yep, that's true.
But it was a good time because my daughter was there, never phone rang, which was a good thing. Any other questions or comments from board members? Questions or comments from the public? Seeing none. Brings us to B2, California School Employees Association report. Was told they were going to report. Maybe they changed their mind. So that brings us to B3, public hearing and approval of resolution number 1920-07. Modesto City School provides each pupil at K through 12 traditional sites sufficient textbooks and/or instructional materials.
I believe this is the hearing. Do we need to open a hearing?
So we'll close the board meeting and open the hearing.
Good evening, President Walker, Board, Superintendent, Cabinet. Education Code 6119 requires that the Board of Education shall hold a public hearing and shall make a determination through a resolution as to whether each pupil in each school in the district has sufficient textbooks or instructional materials, or both, in each subject area that is consistent with the content and cycles of the curriculum framework adopted by the State Board. This must be accomplished prior to the end of the 8th week of school. The district has provided each pupil in the district at the K-12 traditional site with a standards-aligned textbook or basic instructional materials in each of the following areas: history, social science, mathematics, reading, language arts, science, foreign language in grades 7-12, health in grades 7-12, and laboratory science equipment in grades 9-12. All 16 sites that were visited by the Williams Act review teams passed their sufficiency checks without any findings reported. All other sites have reported that they have provided pupils with sufficient textbooks and/or instructional materials. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve resolution number 19/20-07 that Modesto City Schools provides each pupil at K-12 traditional sites sufficient textbooks and/or instructional materials.
Thank you, Mr. Rich. Questions from board members? Seeing none, questions or comments from the public? Seeing none, back to the board for comments.
Motion to approve the resolution?
Second, prior to doing that, there will be a no again from myself. Last year I debated about abstaining or not. My struggle in trying to get English material last year did not work out well. I still think sufficient is a low bar. I still think we have issues with high school math. And I think there's still an issue with digital-only curriculum for parents that don't particularly want to stuck on completely digital curriculum. That's the reason for my no. So we have a motion, we have a second. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. Hearing passes 6-1. Close the hearing. Reopen the regular meeting. Thank you, Ms. Rich. Brings us to item B4, approval of the ratification of fluent English proficient student criteria. Flipping between my notes, that's surely Mrs. Odell. Yes, it is. My instincts are working.
Testing. Okay, it looks like if I stay far away. Well, good evening, Superintendent, Board of Trustees, Dr. Noguchi. I won't move, I'll stay right there. This evening, we have the pleasure of bringing to you our recommendations for redesignation of English fluent learners proficiency for the year 2019-20. And Ms. Mora, she is our Administrator of Special Projects, English Learner Services. She will be presenting our data and information to you tonight. In the meantime, I do have a fabulous acronyms list I'm going to bring out for you so you can follow along in the acronym world of English learners.
Good evening, President Walker, trustees, Superintendent Dr. Noguchi, cabinet, and other guests. So I'm here to present on the reclassification criteria for English learners for 2019-2020. So the purpose of today's presentation is to provide you with some background knowledge on the new reclassification criteria for this school year. So in doing so, I'm going to provide you with background on current English learner data, on updated laws and criteria, on adjusted criteria and cut points, and I'll also discuss how we arrived at the new criteria and then our timeline and next steps. So this information is brought to you in order to recommend your approval of the reclassification criteria for the 2019-2020 school year. So in front of you, you have an acronyms page. There's going to be a lot of acronyms related to English learners. So I'm going to mention a few that I'm going to speak a lot about. So the first one is EL. So if I say EL, it's going to be English learner. For LPAC, it's the English Language Proficiency Assessment of California, and that is a new CELT. A newcomer is an English learner in a U.S. school for less than 12 months. RFEP is redesignated as Fluent English Proficiency Student. So that's when an English learner has met all the criteria to be redesignated. So let's talk about some data. So if you look at your first column, I just want to point out that currently in Modesto City Schools, we service 6,700 students. So about 23% of our students are English learners. And what I want to point out in the first column is that most of our English learners are in the secondary level, so K-8, because we hope that they get reclassified by the time they go to the secondary school. So if you notice the second column, it kind of changes right there. So there's less students in the RFEPs being monitored, which if a student has been reclassified, we monitor or track them for 4 years. So there's less in the elementary because they start getting redesignated at that point. So in high school, there's more that we track. In total, that's 15% of our redesignated students. So total for Modesto City Schools, we track 38% of our students, which is 11,000 students.
Add to that when we say we're tracking them, that means we're currently providing services to either current English learners or those who have recently been redesignated to ensure that they continue to succeed after they're no longer receiving those specific language development minutes per day of instruction. So overall, we are still watching and servicing, providing supports to 38% of our students.
So let's look at some other data. So we're going to look at our RFEP rates for last year. So last year we redesignated 720 students. Most of those come from the elementary levels because we're hoping they get reclassified there, because when they become
go to the high school, now they're considered long-term English learners. And if you look at the third column, we have an increase of long-term English learners. So from last year to this year, we increased 18%. So we have a little bit more of long-term English learner this year. Sorry. In the middle columns, I just want to point out that the newcomers stayed pretty stable, so that's a good thing. So updated laws and criteria. So in order for a student to be redesignated, the state has 4 mandated criteria. So the first one is they need to have a language proficiency assessment, in other words, the LPAC. They also need to have a standardized assessment, parent consultation, and teacher evaluation of student progress. So as of January 2019, the State Board of Education decided to mandate the first one, which is language proficiency assessment. So now it is a requirement that every district reclassifies with an LPAC of 4. Prior to this, we could reclassify students with a 3 or a 4. So that's going to change our reclassification numbers for this year and the following years, just so you are aware. So we're going to talk about our new proposed adjusted criteria. So we know the first one, LPAC of 4, is state mandated. So the one we made the most changes to was a standardized assessment. So last year, we did not reclassify kinder, first, or second students, but now it is a requirement. So we have included those students in our reclassification. Those students will, for their standardized assessment, will be using the DIBELS assessment. And we have cut points for those. So let me give you an example of one. So our current first grader, their cut point, in order for them to meet that criteria, it would have to be their DIBELS end of year assessment from kindergarten. The reason we chose that one is because it aligns with the same timeline as LPAC. So they take the LPAC in the spring of their kinder year. So we also want to make sure that the DIBELS is given in their kinder year. Same for the rest of the grades. For grades 4 through 9th, 12th, these students take the ELA SBAC, so we want to make sure that these students, because the SBAC and the LPAC are given around the same time, we decided to give this criteria. We did make it, their cut point is a mid-level 2 to make it reachable for all students, and there also have been studies that the LPAC of 4 aligns with a CASP or SBAC of a mid-level 2. For students in grades 10th and 11th, they do not take the SBAC, so we left them with their SRI assessment.
Clarify on that when we're saying a 12th grade student, we're referring to their 11th grade, the year prior spring CASP score.
So although that was the criteria that we changed the most, Criteria 2, or the teacher evaluation of student progress, will also be mandated by the state next year, or that is where they're leading it to. So next year, they're planning to take that criteria and use the observation protocol for teachers of English learners. So in order for us to get ahead of the game, we asked Tuolumne and Modesto High to pilot this so that we can ensure our teachers are ready for this state mandate. So now, how did we come up with this reclassification criteria? So before we decided on this criteria, we reviewed all the legal updates. We discussed with student support services, so our students with IEPs were also included. We aligned with neighboring districts with the RFIP criteria. This is really important because we have a lot of feeder districts that come to our schools. So we want to make sure we have similar criteria to all those districts so that we are all reclassifying very similarly so kids are not missed. So we also discussed at curriculum and instruction and professional development meetings. We discussed with principals and vice principals, and we also proposed and approved the RFIP criteria with our DLAC members. So on September 12th, we took this criteria and explained it to our parents. So on September 12th, we had over 22 schools represented at DLAC. There were teachers, admin, and of course, parents at this meeting. When asked for the criteria to be approved, this criteria passed unanimously. So now, because it is approved by DLAC, we are here proposing it to you. So our timeline. If you guys approve the criteria, we hope that in later years we can start reclassifying late July and early August. The reason being is because we get SBAC scores and also the LPAC scores around there, so a student wouldn't have to sit in an ALD class if they have met the criteria. And of course, it aligns with LPAC and the ELA SBAC. Also, it'll be great because it'll be real live teacher evaluation for the Optel, so we won't have to wait for grades. We'll get teacher feedback on the spot. So what have we done? I talked to you earlier that we had a lot of long-term English learners, so we want to ensure those students are getting reclassified. So far, we've had data chats with school sites. We've also, sorry, I'm a little nervous. So we also met and trained all site administrators on the English Learner Parent Partnership. And then, of course, we have created a 0.5 professional development, so we're ensuring that there's a lot of English learner support for teachers and admin. We just had one last Saturday for a 6-hour English learner training. We also have ensured that teachers know the difference between integrated and designated ELD and how to provide the necessary supports for those English learners. And of course, our curriculum adoptions, we make sure they're standard-based. So what are the next steps for us? If you propose a criteria, we can begin the cycle of reclassification. We can begin to pilot the Optel, and we can begin to monitor those students that need the monitoring, the ones we track for 4 years. And of course, we want to keep providing professional development support to sites. And we also have created a new English Learner Committee where we're working on updating our 5-year English Learner Master Plan. So now, I want you to approve DLAC's recommended RFEP criteria for the 2019-2020 school year. Any questions?
Thank you for the presentation. I expect lots of questions. Here, they're all lit up. Let's see. I'm going to start on my left and come back to the right. Trustee West.
Just a quick question on the piloting of the Optel program. Would that also be with Tuolumne and Modesto High or with different schools?
So far, we only have Tuolumne and Modesto High. We did it on volunteer basis. We don't want to add another thing to them, and those are the ones that volunteer.
Thank you.
So the form, it's actually an observation matrix. In the past, the district or the state said somehow the teacher needs to be involved, and of course we want them involved. Now the state is saying that they're going to standardize that across the state, and it's not going to look different district to district, which it does very much. It widely varies what that feedback from the teachers looks like. So they've created this observation matrix for English learners, and it will be mandatory. Exactly the form, we don't know, but that's why we said we want to look at it. We want to have our voice in how it works for the teachers. So because we're piloting it, we can then turn around and say, this works, this doesn't work, you need to adjust this, and give our feedback back to the state before it becomes mandated.
Trustee Newman.
All right, thank you, Miss Mora?
Yeah, Moda.
Moda, okay. Thank you, and welcome to the board meeting. I don't think that you have been given a presentation yet. This is
I have not. This is my first
And
one
a
ever.
former
Did a great
student
job.
of ours too.
I went
Good.
to Modesto High IB program.
Good for you. All right. Well, welcome, and we're glad to have you. I just want to also say thank you to our staff for this comprehensive report. This is and the comprehensive plan. I think this is the first time I've seen this level of detail in terms of how we're going to deal with our particularly long-term English learners. Those students get denied an opportunity to engage in some of our special programs if they don't become reclassified by the time they hit high school. And so it's really important that we do that. So when I'm looking at the chart here of the RFEPs that are being monitored, and so we're keeping track of them for 4 years, what services do those students need during that time, and are we able to provide that, and are we able to meet those needs?
So it is based on site-by-site basis. So the district provides a form to the site where we're going to monitor attendance, behavior, grades, etc. So if a student is meeting the criteria, we usually leave the student alone. If a student is not meeting, let's say attendance is an issue, then the site has to provide some services like some counselor talks, etc. So it just depends on the site supports, and it also depends on what the student needs. So it varies by site.
The federal government requires us to monitor. It used to be monitoring for 2 years, and you're going to see that next in the board policy. Recently, we've had researchers come out and they said 2 years isn't enough. What's happening is that the students are kind of backsliding. And so now it is mandated as of, I think, July 1st, 2018, that we monitor for 4 years to ensure that they keep moving forward. So, like Maricela said, what that monitoring is, of course, is never stated. What we're choosing to look at is behavior, attendance, and grades. And if any one of those hits a flag where we're concerned, then we're asking the site to get involved. And we are looking for those students actively so that it's an extra layer of support to the site.
And then the on the chart here, I'm particularly looking at it's in our handout chart on page 3, the current data chart, where we have our ELs and the RFEPs being monitored, and then we're calling them all together. I just want to make sure I understand the chart. Total ELs in Modesto City Schools in progress. Am I understanding that right? We're adding those two together, and that's why we're calling them in progress?
Correct.
There's no other additional numbers in that. And then in the current data here is just breaking them down in terms of who they are we're monitoring, right? That's the next chart.
They're the types of ELs. So we have a student who is just in the middle of being redesignated. That's that RFEP.
Yeah.
We also have ELs that are brand new, 12 months or less in a U.S. school. And then we have LTELs. So an LTEL, as you may very well know,
long term.
That's a student who has been in a U.S. school for more than 6 years and is not making progress on either the LPAC nor SBAC. Either one can trigger this concern that they are not making sufficient progress in their language development.
I think that was my only questions. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Trustee Lopez.
Well, thank you so much for the report. As mentioned before, it's very detailed and something that's definitely welcomed more often. I wanted to ask about the ELMP committee. And do you guys, for a 5-year master plan, you definitely want to look for a group that's going to have a vision for it. Who do you guys have in mind? Who do you guys, I know that you guys don't have specifics right now, but what kind of individuals are you looking for to make up that group?
We actually invited administrators, teachers, parents,
Students. We have students and community members.
Mm-hmm.
And
So-
if you'd like to join us, you're welcome to come on out.
Thanks.
Our meeting's on Wednesday. That's our first meeting.
So again, because we receive Title III funds from the federal government, they require us, and it's a great thing, to have a 5-year plan and to get everybody involved with what that plan looks like, those that are either English learners themselves or allies of English learners. And so we have a plan. It's time to update it. It's been a little while. It still says things like CSTs in it and KC. We've got to move those things out. And that's natural. It's our 5-year plan. And so we have all kinds of folks coming together, voluntary. We've even asked folks, hey, who do you think in the community may want to be involved in understanding what this plan looks like? And it covers every aspect of the English learner life, if you will, from registration to graduation and beyond.
Great. No, thank you. I think it's amazing that you guys are bringing in community. It's one of it's one thing that's important to me. And I'm glad that you guys are incorporating into it. So thank you very much for that.
Trustee Brown.
Yeah, I appreciate the focus and the intensity that we see here. This is the group of students who many times get left behind, and if the district is going to make huge gains, this is where we can definitely do it. I appreciate that it's got the professional development angle and that you're using that to support the teachers and the whole education community. I did have a question on the page 3 current data. I think you call them the RFEPs. and the 4-year monitoring. You also mentioned in your presentation the large number of feeder districts that we have. I'm assuming that we're also monitoring the RFEPs that are coming to us from the feeder districts.
Yes, we monitor any student that comes from not only feeder, but if they come from like Ceres, Patterson, we also monitor. So as long as they step into a Modesto City Schools and they're still under the 4 years, we monitor those students.
So how do we know that information when they come as a new student?
It's in CalPads. So wherever they are, because again, this is a federal law, we know that they've been redesignated. If we have any questions about their redesignation timeframe or their status, then Metasela's Assessment Center group, they are wizards at this, and they go and they dig and they call that district and they figure out exactly where that student is in their journey for language proficiency.
Good, so we're not letting anybody slip through the cracks.
No, we make sure we monitor every student, and when we fix errors that sometimes occur, so if a student comes as an English or only student and they're actually an English learner, we actually fix that and make sure they're on the right track as well.
All right, I'm gonna stop in the middle before I come back to the left. Yes, they track everything, much to my dismay. One couple of questions. The LPAC, that was my one and only trip to Sacramento. If you ever have a problem about public comment, don't go to Sacramento. They give you 60 seconds. I asked that day that they were ensuring that because it was English learners, that test was not computer-based. Is that still the case?
So starting this year, in February, the computer will be computer-based. We are also getting ahead of the curve on that. So next week, we are piloting at 6 schools. So we're going to make sure everything runs smoothly there too.
All right, at least we're consistent. Sacramento has never not misled me. I was watching a previous board meeting. It was interesting. Gladys Williams brought up the Dibbles one year, and one of her concerns was that it's a 60-second test, and we're giving it in kindergarten. Is that a true statement that we're essentially giving a kindergartner sort of a 60-second assessment, and we're making a decision based on that? I wasn't sure if that was truthful or not, but she is a former teacher. So Dibbles a 60-second bit?
Well, I can't speak for if it's a 60-second bet. What I can say is that we're required to have a universal assessment, and that means that every kid is taking this so that we ensure that they're taking something similar.
Okay, it was
I'll get back to you on the 60 seconds.
Okay,
I've never seen
just,
it done in 60 seconds.
I was just curious because it was interesting because I was watching a previous board meeting and
Yeah.
Trustee Newman brought up the Dibbles and it was important. And then she came up and talked about the Dibbles and the issue being sort of an English learner, sort of when you do language, when you're building long sentences, one of the concerns people have is how much are you carrying forward? And her issue was a small kindergartner, first grade, trying to carry something forward with a 60-second bandwidth. I guess the other question is if they're taking the SBAC in grade 3, why did we not include them in sort of the 3 through 8 range there?
To clarify, they are included. So the 4th through 9th means they took the test 3rd, 4th, 5th, or 6th, or 7th. So as a 9th grader, that's when we have the results. That's
Got
why
it. And then the other question I had was, well, actually two. If we're doing this in late July, August, does that impact our annual award ceremony where we reclassify students and all the parents come together and we give out the awards?
No.
And that may not be something you can answer, and I was just curious. It hit me as that's a big deal in the community.
It's a very big deal, and they will receive their awards and their recognition in the springtime because it happened during that year.
And then the other thing was you said mid-level 2 on the SBAC. That's mid-level nearly met. It's not a very high bar, is it, given that you just said the state's raising the bar? Is that, am I
So
making
this-
sense there?
Yeah, so the state raised the bar on the language proficiency, not English language arts. So we've chosen that technically redesignating a fluent English proficient means that you are approximating native-like language. Doesn't mean that you are totally meeting the bar, but you are approximating it. So a high level 2, somewhere between 2.5 and above, we believe matches that language. And now the 4 on the on the LPAC is extremely high. So what I believe we're going to see across the state is a plummet in redesignation rates because it used to be a 3 and a 4 for everybody, and now the whole state only gets to use 4. So we are cutting at least half of our students who used to be ready out. And
That's
this is-
frustrating.
it's frustrating. However, what's happened is they did an in-depth study. They asked a private group to come in and really analyze what is a 4 on LPAC. How does it really compare to proficiency on SBAC? And what they found is a 1 is a 1, a 2 is a 2, a 3 is blurry and you can't quite tell. So they cut out the 3. 4 is definitely passing SBAC.
It's an interesting thought process on it
Yeah.
because they really have, from your description of what you presented, the state has taken the bar and moved it substantially higher, which is not their general operating motive. But they've done that here while at the same time making it more difficult to get there. And if you look statewide, it's not an all-star performance with non-English learners. I
Correct.
believe the number sits somewhere around 50% on a good day of a regular, normal, native English-speaking student getting above the SBAC. And so now that bar has been monumentally moved for our English learners, which to me goes to confidence and recognition and sort of lifting people up versus saying, no, you have to stay here longer. I'm not approving it. There's red warning lights, if that makes sense. That doesn't sort of square up with what we ask everybody else to do and putting them in a more difficult position. Trustee Marks. Thank you.
Thank you. So this is a huge lift. 11,000 students, a third of our students are in being tracked or assessed, we'll call them assessed, on every year so that we can ensure they're getting the learning options that they need. So I just wanted to know, so the students, so let's just say we have a student that was redesignated 2 years ago, third year, they just started their third year. When do we find out that they're not doing well? And when do we add in some kind of program or services that will help them? And how do we assess that? So you said it was through attendance and their grades. Is that the only way that we do it? We don't do another language proficient assessment?
Once they've been reclassified, they don't take another English language proficiency that test. That's why it's crucial that we monitor them in other ways,
Okay.
like their grades, their behavior, their attendance.
So are we allowed to give them any other assessments? Language assessment? Oh, okay. Okay, so then next, back to Mr. Walker's point on the taking longer to reassess them. I actually think it's a good idea because they get a longer time to gain the skills, because we know that when students fall behind, it takes them a lot longer to catch up. But if they still are receiving those services for a longer period of time, I believe it will, in the long run, though we'll take a dip next year, all of us will, for this tracking, how we're tracking the redesignation. But I really believe that the students need that extra information, extra time to get their feet ready to go for the next level that they're going to go to, and I believe they'll do well. So I'm going to throw something out there that was a really interesting idea. I went to a conference many years ago in Texas, or I heard it, there was a teacher in Texas that was doing this. They had the same number of students. They had about twice as many students as we have. They had 68 languages spoken in their school district. This teacher, she was on the front page of the newspaper, and I think she received a national award that week for the program that she implemented at that school. It took 3 years. She took the students through dual language in their home language. Took 9 languages at their school. Now remember, they had 69 languages spoken at home. They took the top 9. She handpicked the teachers to teach them because she wanted teachers that really would invest the time to do this, because it was a pretty significant program. They learned their home language, to read and write their home language. Took them 2 years to learn their home language, to read and write in their home language, and then another year to 2 years to read and write in English. Their students were far and away above the English only students, and that's why she was on the front page of the paper, because they recognized that the way the brain works, they needed to learn their own language, how to read and write it, and then they could transition to a new language. And I thought, wow, we haven't done that. We do dual language, but I know that for English proficient students, that's what's needed, is to be able to help them assess what they need to be able to excel in English after they transition. And so I know that isn't something we're doing right now, but I'm just throwing that out there as an idea that they did in another state that actually was very successful. So it was a professor that did that. But I think this, what we're doing tonight to redo this program and to fit with what the state's asking, I will support it. I believe that it's where we need to be, and I know that as we look at this for the future, whatever services we can provide for these students, I know in the long run, it's gonna pay off big time. Because I know these students wanna learn, they're working hard to learn, they just need that extra time and extra services, I think that'll help them be successful, so.
Thank you.
All right, before I go out to public, I found one more. What's an Ever EL? That's a new group. And you explained most of them, and it's only showed up in the last couple of years in reports, but I'm not sure what an Ever EL is.
So in DataQuest, they use this term Ever EL, and it's really what we're looking at here in the total ELs in MCS progress. It's your ELs that are current, it's your ELs that you're tracking and checking and monitoring that they're still doing well after you've released those scaffolds of language development.
So they're not considered RFEP anymore.
No, once you're RFEP, that's done. Yeah.
So that, okay, I'll just be quiet. And
Yeah.
with all that being said, questions or comments from the public? Seeing none, back to the board. Questions, comments, or a motion to approve? The 12, what is it? Resolution number 1920-07, the Modesto City Schools provides each pupil at K through 12 traditional, oh crap, wrong agenda item. Shoot. Approval of reclassification of fluent English proficient students criteria. So motion, trustee Marks, a second, trustee Lopez, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Passes unanimously. Thank you, and you did very well in your first report for the board.
Thank you.
Good job.
Gotta stop moving the computer. Brings us to B5, report on enrollment counts for 2019 as of 9/2019. Looks to be Mr. Zierli and Mr. Walterstorff. I'm trying to juggle between the computer and
Thank
the
you. You're
printout.
correct. Good evening, Board President. I'm going to turn this over to Senior Director Dwayne Walterstorff to give the report in the allotted time. I just want to say that this is a change this year. The numbers you see are as of 6 weeks. Typically, it's 4 weeks. And looking at our data dashboard, the 6 week mark seems to be our high water mark. So we thought, let's start counting to 6 weeks for enrollment purposes. The only issue is comparing to last year from 4 weeks. So after this year, for next year, we'll have 6 week comparables. But the data that Dwayne's going to give you is as of the 6th week.
Good evening, Dwayne Walterstorff, Senior Director of Planning and Facilities. I'm going to quickly go through this report, and then we'll get on to some questions. And so if you're kind of following the report, I'm on page 2 and looking at the chart here. And what's happening in the elementary district, so that's the TK through 8, and we're seeing there for general education that we have a decline of 331 students. Special ed actually is up 37, and overall we're down 294. If we turn around and we kind of break that down a little bit, is when we're looking at TK, because it's kind of a smaller population, at least we hope we get a whole lot more kids than that when they go to kindergarten. That part is up 55, and that's exciting. We've gone to full day this year. Then kind of the next group there is K through 6th grade, and in that grouping there we declined 382 students. And then we've got the junior high 7 and 8, and we just have a small, well, we kind of say it's really just kind of a push. It's -4. So our decline is really and you can see there where we've got 117, 112, 137, and those numbers they're really coming because of the class as a whole. Some years are a lot lower than other years, and if you kind of follow the progression, you can see that happening. For instance, if we compare 1st grade and we look at, if I go back to 2013 and compare it to 2019, there were 1,862 students in 2013 and 1,505 students in 2019. So that's a decline of 321 students. So that kind of shows why we're down 331. And then going to the next page, we get into the high schools. And here we see that for general ed, we're a decline of 16. Special ed, we're a decline of 4 for a total decline of 20. The big change there is in the senior year there, we're down 158 students in comparison to the prior year. Some of this, I think, can be translated into, if we look at the progression, the kind of the cohort, if we look at how big those classes were when they were 9th graders and how big they are when they're 12th graders. If we look at the prior years, 16, 17, and 18, and we average out those because they're real close, that decline from 9th grade to 12th grade is 475 students. Excuse me. For this year, that 12th grade class declined 640 students. So that's a significant decline from the prior 3 years. So something we definitely need to be looking at, and especially the fact that moving from 11th grade to 12th grade, it declined by 355 students. So that's more than half of that decline happened just from last spring to this fall. Then if we move on to the last page and we're looking at the district as a whole, and we basically bring all the information together and we look at the bottom line there, and we look across the years, we're really hovering around the 30,000 student mark over all the years. Back in 2014, we were 102 below, 16, we were 368 above, and now we're 237 students below. Hopefully we can kind of hover around there or start increasing, because the average over those years is 46 above. And then in conclusion, just want to talk about the sites, and that school sites capacities continue to be impacted because of the size and growth of certain things. This year, some of that impact is coming because we've gone to full day transitional and regular kindergarten. So it's required more space, and then the necessity for special programs to make sure our students are learning when they're at a disadvantage. And then also the fact that our sites are, they're old. Elementaries are over 60 years old, junior highs are over 50 years old, and high schools on average are over 40 years old. So that concludes my report, and I'll turn it back over to Tim.
Yeah, I just want to talk a minute before the board asks questions about next steps, both for what we're going to do or plan to do for declining enrollment, and also about our projections. And so, as is noted in the spreadsheet, we were off about 300 students at K-8 in our projections. And so we got to look at that. We're going to have to tighten that down. We do a 3-year cohort projection or a ratio for our projections. And we also do a 1 year. And obviously the 1 year with our recent trends is going to be more conservative than the 3-year because it's only going to look 1 year back. We will focus more now on the 1 year, our loss of 1 year, which seems to be a trend. This is now the 3rd year in a row for elementary. So we will use these numbers in December to project out our enrollment for next year for staffing numbers, and we're going to use a 1 year analysis, a conservative analysis at K-6 because of our continued loss of students. What Dwayne went over and what isn't necessarily reflective here is our loss between grade levels. So not only Dwayne showed the loss of grade levels in a linear fashion, but if we look this year, we lost a substantial amount of students from 5th grade to 6th grade, from 6th grade to 7th grade, and from 7th grade to 8th grade. We usually lose students between 6th and 8th grade, but this year there was a number of students that we didn't see in the prior years from 5th to 6th grade that we lost. And so, again, we're going to use a 1 year projection analysis to project out our enrollment numbers for K-6 to be a little more conservative and reduce that 300 student variance that we saw this year. I do want to touch on a couple positives real quick. As Dwayne pointed out, we have more transitional kindergartners than we had in the past, and we'll talk in a reason why in a minute. But we also had more ninth graders, if you noticed. Our ninth grade class was substantially higher than prior ninth grade class. So both of those bode well because the transitional kindergartners we should keep in the system. So they will continue in our system up through the grade levels, and then the ninth grade population will stay in our secondary student population through 12th grade. So that's good news. We had more than we thought of or projected at transitional kindergarten and both ninth grade levels. We are also looking at what can we do district-wide to prevent this loss of students. We do have a planning day. Dr. Noguchi has identified a half day on October 15th for us to come together and really focus on the why and bring data to determine, okay, where are those fifth graders going? Do we know where they landed? Can we identify why they went somewhere? We have a new product that is called Forecast 5 that allows us to map our students. So we'll be able to, on a map, identify pockets of, in our boundaries, where are the enters coming from, and try to zero down into a reason why they're going to Ceres or why they're going to Sylvan or wherever they're going. We have to identify that, and we have a half day planned to sit down and go through the data and talk about what's the data show us. However, again, as I mentioned, we have implemented full day kindergarten, a full day transitional kindergarten. We believe that's a reason why the numbers are higher, and we are confident and optimistic that those numbers will grow each year as more people get accustomed to the fact that Modesto City Schools now has a full day transitional kindergarten and kindergarten program. We're looking at, and Mark Herbst may be able to comment more on this, but I believe we've enhanced, or we are enhancing our capacity for after school program to take more families, keep more families here in the district, increase our opportunities for them. We are looking at program options on the east side, and you're probably wondering why the east side. Well, we have a very robust dual language academy on the west side. We do not have anything like that on the east side. So those are things that we're going to be talking about, discussing. How can we, what can we offer with our current sites? Dwayne talked about our site configuration. What can we offer to keep families here if they're leaving us for something else? So with that, that's just a kind of summary of our next steps, where we're at, and we're here to answer any questions that the board may have.
Trustee Newman.
Thank you, Mr. Walterstorff and Mr. Zierli, for your report. This might be a question for Mr. Godot. With the 9-12, the decline of students between 9 to 12, those numbers are alarming. I think that Mr. Walterstorff said it was like 600 students, approximately.
640.
Yeah, that's huge. And so, are some of those students dropouts? Is that what are they not going to school? And so, or are they just getting captured by other school districts? So, I mean, do we have a way of tracking that?
We have a way of going back and looking at from year to year how many students would be categorized as a dropout. That's a very specific definition based on their 4-year cohort, but we can get that data to you.
Yeah, I just wonder if that's some of what that number is. That's just a larger number that I've heard before. I mean, we are addressing the issue of the elementary decline, and we're just not getting the students, and obviously they're not staying with us. But the high school has been the numbers. This number is bigger than I thought it was, so I'm just a little alarmed. So that was just what the explanation could be on that. So.
Another explanation on that, and what Dwayne has reported here, is our comprehensive high school numbers, and that's what you see at our 7 comprehensive schools. And below that, then you'll see Elliott alternative programs. So some of the students are leaving the comprehensive program, but that we're capturing them down below in the Elliott Alternative Program. That
Okay.
accounts for some of that. Not all, but some of the loss in students.
Okay, great, thank you.
Trustee Brown?
So I appreciate the numbers, and I see the decline that we're seeing over a 3-year period. And as I look at the numbers and reference that to my profession, which is multifamily housing, I'm seeing that as we're losing students, the housing costs are rising rapidly, forcing many of our families out of affordable housing. Do we take that into consideration with our planning numbers? It's just as important that we project appropriately the decline and the exodus of families to areas that are more affordable as our costs rise. Just curious about that. And then also curious about concerns with immigration. Are we taking into account any students that we're losing to immigration issues? How can we track any of those things?
Those are one element in this that we can track is birth rates, and we do track that and monitor that. As far as because we are a farming community and we have a large migrant population, those things are difficult to track. Now, obviously, I think probably some of it is the fact that we're seeing this trend of 3 years of declining, that I think those numbers are going to help us in projecting going forward. But other than that, it is challenging to figure out that population of whether they're going to stay or whether something is going to attract them to go somewhere else.
Trustee Irvin?
Just kind of piggyback on what Trustee Newman was saying about trying to pinpoint where they're going, especially that high school group between 11 and 12, 12th grade, and that 600 and so students. Isn't are we monitoring like which schools request their CUM files and things like that in order to see where they're going, or if they're going to another school or something like that, in terms of at a way to pinpoint. I know you got the dropout, and maybe like I said, who requests their CUM file. Hey, this student went to another district or whatever.
Yeah, we are tracking that information based on who made a request. The other thing, just to point out at the high school, and it may not quite get to what you guys had said, but I do think that there's a bubble from a neighboring district down south, and a lot of those IDTs, as they come up, are coming through the grades. I'll just give you an example of here in Modesto City. When we get an IDT, we'll say for Rose Avenue, and they come into Rose. Well, generally speaking, they request that IDT for La Loma, and then they generally request that IDT for Downey, meaning once a kid goes, they tend to stay over there, even with our high schools. So I wouldn't be surprised at some of those high school numbers, or the fact that they are filtering up through elementary, junior high, and then choosing to stay in the neighboring district. That would be my hypothesis. But to answer your question, yes, we're tracking the CUMs.
Trustee Marks?
I have a question on the last chart that has the TK 8th grade and then 9 through 12 and then alternatives. So it's 3 on it. So if you pull it up, it was, anyway, so when I calculated out the grand total, so I just wanted to know, is this the projected numbers or is this the actual numbers? Because in 2014 to 2019, there was a loss of 135 students. So in 5 years, according to that chart, we lost 135 students. We increased special ed 250 students. So that was a large increase in special ed over that time. So I was trying to understand, because to me 135 students loss enrollment over 5 years is not I'm not super, I don't know what word to use, freaked out. But anyway, so am I looking at that chart right?
Okay,
That
so
last page? Or maybe I'm reading it wrong.
Well, the last column is just a 1-year difference, so it's
Right.
just a comparison between 18 and 19. It's not a comparison across.
But if you start at 2014 and you go all the way to 2019, so just go across. So we started in 2014 with 29,898 students. In 2019, we have 29,763 students. That is a net loss of 135 students.
Yeah, you're correct.
Okay.
But what we're doing here is you got to break it down into our regular program, TK to 12, our alternative program, and our special education program. So there's three different types of students to fill up that bucket. And so what you see here is that the growth in our special needs students and at our 912 population has balanced out the loss at TK to 8. So overall, yes, you're looking at it correctly in that. Do I really have? But I believe we have a level of concern because we're losing at our TK to 6 population,
Right.
and so those students are going to stay with us in the system through high school. We don't know what our neighbors are going to do. I mean, we're relying on growth in Sylvan and some of our neighbors to bring them back in 9th grade. So that's why you see overall not quite the disparity that you see when you just look at our TK to 8th grade population.
And I just want to point out something on the students with disabilities, just to put it in perspective.
Right.
How this report was ran. It does not include, because you'll hear me, or you'll hear a talk, or you hear a presentation on. We've got about 4,000 kids with IEPs in this district.
Right.
That right there represents the students that are in a self-contained environment for the majority of their day. That's what counts that particular number. So inside the top numbers, you actually have students that are receiving speech and language support, which is a special education service. A student that may be in a resource specialist program, which is a period of resource per se, or less than 50% of their day in a classroom for students with disabilities. So they're up on the top. Those numbers down there are what I would consider to be our learning handicap classes or our more severe handicap classes. That's that number down below.
And I would add, you didn't see a drop at TK to 8 until 2017. So half of that chart only reflects a decline. 3 years from now, if this continues, you're going to have 6 years of decline. So you will see a much greater decrease overall because the first 3 years on that chart were actually growth years at the elementary level.
I know. Well, I know over my time we've lost 6,000 students. So we had 36,000 students at one point. We went from 32,000 to 36,000 and then now down to 29,000. So I know we've had, in the recession, we lost a lot of student enrollment. So I'm right now, though, looking at these 4 years or 5 years, granted there's reason to be concerned over some of the loss, but I tracked the high schoolers that start in 9th grade and graduate. So this last year was the largest group that we declined was 600. The year before it was 400. So I went back to the 4-year overall. So if you track it, what year is that? For some reason, the way it printed it didn't print the dates on the top of my page. They print them at the bottom of the page. So, but if you track them, they were 400 and then 400, and that's about. I mean, if we put them in alternate ed and they chose to go to Elliott alternative education, or they chose a non-comprehensive high school, then I could see how those numbers have, they are changing from where they were. And our graduation rates are still pretty high. So I know what they've chosen to do, the students have, they're still being successful in graduating, so that's a good thing. But yet, I just wanted to know where they've gone to, and I know that's something that we might learn later. If they've gone to another district or another charter school or the county or private school, or, because there's a lot of options in our area now that they didn't have access to before, so. But thank you, this was a good report, and I appreciate all the numbers laid out.
All right. I think I'd echo the others' concerns. The high school number that bothers me the most is the 355 between 11th and 12th grade. Where did we lose 355 students between 11th and 12th grade? As a parent, that's a huge jump, and so something happened there. as far as Elliott, I think I look at the number here, it says we got 66. That's only 66 that moved over there from out of 355. That's not going to cover that number. I have a neighbor who was going to have his son move out of one of our high schools into Elliott. He's now chosen county, and so they're using PACE. I don't know if we can keep track of what they're doing over there. I think the other piece that might prove at least something to sort of reference against is sort of as we move past this report, look at what other districts are reporting on percentages and where they line up. In the sense that if we're down 2% in our K through 8, is Sylvan down 2% or are they down 1%? Are we tracking in the norm or are we somehow out of sort of what the normal statistic would be? If that makes sense, just to sort of get a feel for it. But that's an extraordinary number because 600 students at high school, given that the funding level for high school students is substantially higher than the funding level we get for elementary students, that's a big hit budget-wise. But I also think it indicates something else. And I don't know what it is. And to Chad's point, the housing thing sort of makes me nervous, but it doesn't. Because when I'm commuting back and forth from the Bay Area, I can assure you there are more people coming from here going there than there have ever been. And so it makes me think if they can't afford affordable housing here, then where do you jump to? To me, the next move is an exit across the border, not to another town. And so I don't know how we factor that in, but what makes me most nervous is that high school drop of 400 between 11th and 12th. I think the rest of it we address and look at sort of how do we compare statistically to districts that surround us? Are we tracking in the same sort of margin of error? And if we are, then we're sort of within the norm. If we're not, then there's a bigger question to be asked. And I think, am I making sense?
Yeah, but I would point you to the alternative ed chart below that. If you look at the 11th grade to 12th grade numbers, we go from 125 11th graders one year to 456 12th graders the next year. So that's what I'm saying. You'll see a drop in the comprehensive setting, but you'll see a corresponding, you got to go diagonally, you'll see a corresponding increase from 11th to 12th grade. And so that's where a majority of the students that you see leaving a comprehensive school, that's where they end up, right there.
Still makes me nervous.
Absolutely.
That's a big number movement in a year. It just, it just is. And so maybe we can at some point do a board communication as you move a month or so down the line. And our feeder districts have done this same report. Where do we sit statistically within that realm? I mean, it wouldn't be, you look at Sylvan, Stan Union, Empire, Salida. I think that would give you a pretty decent snapshot, or is it Riverbank? But does it track with what we're seeing? And then continue to try to improve programs. But those are some scary numbers. With that, I see no more lights. Questions or comments from the public? I don't see any public left. Trustee Brown's got a light up again.
So that shift from our comprehensive high schools to the alternative ed programs tells me that we're capturing students that aren't successful, but are we getting full ADA for those students?
And I don't know that we should assume those are all captured from our comprehensive site. I don't think that's been established. Just, oh, well, I'm not sure.
So
Probably they are, but I don't know that's true.
I'm wondering if can we get some numbers that would tell us if that is effective alternatives to help students graduate that is causing that shift?
To answer your question, we get funding for 11th grader, 12th grader, no matter where the program they're in. We get the same amount of base funding for those students.
So I think it also goes back to sort of numbers that set off red flags. If we're moving off of, if we've got a larger percentage of students that are moving off of a comprehensive site into credit recovery at 11th, 12th grade, then the answer there to me seems get far more proactive far earlier so that we don't get there. Because to me, you're in a press decision-making process then as a parent. You know, very similar to my neighbor who was trying to choose between Elliott and Pace. And I don't think Elliott gets the good news it should get because they do a fantastic job over there. And they are a great safety net, and you see these kids' success stories, but the perception in the public isn't my perception. I'm in my own little boat over here cheering for Elliott, and I think that they may be making those other decisions because my neighbor did not take his son to Elliott, he took him to Pace, which means he's now over at the county by the county jail, and for whatever reason, that makes him feel better, but there's other alternatives out there. But I think my real concern is, how do we get in that position where we're so far behind in credit recovery, we got to chase that hard? Another red flag, and then move forward. No more lights. Back to public that isn't there. Back to board. You are. I think if you hire than the public, you're like officials. You're like official guys. Back to the board for comment. So I have to get rid of the report. So we are looking for, this is just report, there is no vote. This is the problem with the computer. So we're up to B6, approval of membership in Northern California Regional Liability Excess Fund to provide property, general liability, crime, cyber liability, equipment breakdown, insurance coverages for the 1920 year and 2 subsequent years. Mr. Zierli, I believe you have good news to bring us here.
I do. Thank you again, President Walker. Our renewal date is 10/1, tomorrow. So there are 2 ways for school districts to purchase property and liability insurance. We can use a broker and buy commercial insurance, commercial coverage. We're buying insurance in that case, which we've done successfully for a number of years. Or we can participate in a pooled program with other districts. It's called the JPA, and buy into a risk management program. And so there is a risk management program. We get typically more services through the JPA, more coverage than we would in just going out and buying insurance through the commercial market. And so what we're bringing forward to you in a time when for many districts our risks are increasing on us, including cyber risks that we've dealt with here in our district. You've seen our neighbor district, Sylvan, dealing with cyber risks as well. We have recent wildfires throughout the state of California, and we have AB 218 that is waiting governor's approval that centers around sexual molestation cases. And so insurance, especially commercial insurance, people are getting uneasy in providing insurance to school districts based on all of these risks. We took it upon ourselves based on leadership from Dr. Noguchi and a department analysis we had done that suggested we look at a pooled purchase program. And so we did that. We reached out to 3 different pooled JPAs, and due to timing restrictions, we got a response back from one of those at the time that this board agenda was put together. But we did get, within this last week, we did finally get a second one, but it solidified our recommendation. It was a little bit even higher cost than this one right here. CISC finally submitted a proposal to us, but it did not include property. It only included liability. So we really didn't have time. We couldn't consider that because it didn't include property coverage. So we are bringing forward to you a proposal to enter into NorCal Relief. NorCal Relief has 441 districts within their JPA, mainly in Northern California, but they do have a sister organization, Southern California Relief. That's a large number. That's 40% of the districts across the state. They have 2 million average daily attendance represented in those 400 school districts. They're going to provide us matching grants for safety. They're going to provide us a reward program. So again, we're increasing our services by partnering in this other than just buying insurance. This is recommended by myself, George Lynn, Dwayne Wolterstorff, who oversees the risk management responsibility for the district. In addition, we're going to save about $1 million annually on our premium payments, while we have reduced our deductible from $250,000 to $150,000, and we've also increased our services to include cybersecurity as well as others. So.
Outstanding news there. We got, Cindy was ready to go early. Nope, if you were ready to go, shoot, then I'll move back to the right here.
Okay. I know, good news. Appreciate the fact that took the time to research this and find ways we could save some funds and also increase our insurance. So I have a question on their board of directors. Do we have a person that is going to serve on that? Because when I was reading through their joint powers of authority, it looks like the members are part of their board of directors, and then on that, we also receive 3 votes. So am I reading that correctly?
You are correct, and I failed to say we have Tyler Houston here, who's representative from Northern California Relief, to help answer any questions that you may have. But yes, we would have one person, whether that's myself or George or Dwayne, would be on that board. And because of the size of our districts, we would have 3 votes.
Right. So because it says that it has to be done within 30 days, and it has to be done in writing, I figured you already had figured that out, or you're already going to do that because it starts tomorrow.
Correct.
Is that correct?
That's
okay.
correct.
So you've already suggested some names, but because you have to have a member and then an alternative. So I was
yes. Well, again, there's 3 of us. We also get to be represented on committees.
Yes.
There's committees that would serve to George's strength, to Dwayne's strength, as well as having the voter member.
Okay.
So.
Great. And it's nice that they only have 1 meeting a year.
That is nice. And
that was good,
it's somewhat local.
Okay. Thank
Trustee
you.
Mark, or Trustee Newman.
Thank you.
All right, I appreciate Mr. Zierli answered a bunch of questions that I had today. So I was just going to pick out probably the most salient one on this. You've already asked about management. And I think this is a great idea. I think that insurance in California, as you mentioned, is becoming a dynamic industry, and where they're trying to come up with different ways of doing things. Okay, so the investments. So we're pulling our money together with our premiums with other school districts, and so the investments, how are they managed? You answered this in the email exchange, but I think it's important to state for the public.
Yeah, the investments are managed under government code sections 53600 and 53601. They are managed by Morgan Stanley Wealth Management in compliance with those government codes, as well as the Northern California Relief Investment Policy. The guidelines are very strict for this type of an agency, and even for school districts as well. The investment portfolio is reviewed by Northern California Relief, the member districts, for compliance on a quarterly basis.
And the other question that we just hadn't covered yet is the idea of, is there a cap on this insurance? And by cap, I mean a limit to the amount of coverage that would be provided pursuant to the policy.
No, this is one of the improvements from our existing coverage. We did have an annual aggregate limit cap on our current coverage. This has a per occurrence cap. So we could have, not that I would want it, we could have multiple $5 million occurrences as long as each one does not exceed the cap. There is no annual aggregate limit in this program.
So what's the per occurrence cap?
It's up to $5 million before our excess coverage takes over.
All right, thank you.
All right, I will concur, good news. Only because I remember this agenda item last year when our insurance premiums doubled and they went up $1 million, and I was not particularly pleased with that result. And so we've clearly gone back to where we were. And so it was a 1-year bit where we had to pay 100% increase. Now we're back to where we were. Greater coverage, more pooling. I think that's a great way to solve the problem. And especially with insurance in California, I think I mentioned in consult that having heard a presentation by our fire chief, we have one of the highest rated, badly rated fire areas in the state. And so that again affected the premiums we were paying because it put us in a higher risk zone. And I think this is a great way to get out of that. The cybersecurity clearly is an issue. My comment is well done. Trustee Marks again.
I only had a brief comment, just that the fact that they've been around since 1986, I thought was really, it gave me, like, this is a long-term company who's been around a long time. So I just appreciated that the agreement had started when they formed it in 1986, May 1st. So.
And it is the largest JPA of the kind of member districts in the state. I will say the only kind of downside that we had to talk through, and I said this in front of them, so as they're in the room, is it's a 3-year commitment that we're making. But maybe that shows the stability of the program, is they don't have districts come in and come out within a 12-month period. So it is a 3-year commitment, but we're confident that this is the best interest for our district.
Trustee Lopez.
I wanted to go ahead and make the motion to approve the membership.
I have to go out to the public, but as soon as I come back, yes. Out to the public for comment on the insurance program. Seeing none, back to the board. We have a motion from Trustee Lopez. We have lots of seconds. Trustee Newman, second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Pass unanimously. Great job, Mrs. Early and team. Thank you, sir. B7, approval to take action on proposal to put ARs directly into consent on the board agenda.
So this came about as a result of the special board meeting when I believe President Walker asked for us to take a vote on it, and Trustee Newman, rightly so, said it needed to be agendized. So we have it. We're just going back to where we were in the special board meeting from a week ago, Monday. So I asked for your approval to put ARs into the consent, recognizing there will be some ARs that we pull and have further discussion on as they become before us.
Thank you, Superintendent. Questions from board members? Seeing none. Questions and comments from the public? Seeing none. Back to the board, looking for a motion.
I just had a comment.
Okay, and a comment from Trustee Marks.
I have one comment. As much as I'd like to shorten our board meetings and put these all in consent, I just feel like it might look like we're trying to, well, I've had the public say, when we put things in consent, it looks like we're trying to hide something, and I don't want it to look like that. And so I understand that there's probably a majority of the board that wants to do this, but I just wanted to let you know that I'm gonna vote no on it, because I still believe the ARs, even if they are short or long, they should be in the discussion portion of the board meeting. So that's my thought.
Trustee Newman.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Noguchi. I believe that ARs aren't even required to be acted on by the board. They can be written by staff and then implemented. It's board policy that has to be done in an open session, and board policy that has to be written in open session. I think it's great we're doing this, at least in consent, because then it does make it available to the public. They can access it for the meetings, and that it would be available, and they can, we can move something from a consent item into the discussion item as well. So it provides that option. I'm voting yes.
Trustee Brown.
Just a statement to the public. As a board member, I'm going to look at those ARs just as carefully if they're in consent as if they were in the public portion of the meeting.
And I would agree with everything stated by everyone here, because I think, one, it is true that we don't have to approve them. 2, we've done it in the past. 3, yes, we're going to read them, because if there's something out of line that doesn't match up with the board policy takes precedence over the AR anyway. Mm-hmm. And so I think there's a check and balance there, but I also think that we do more than most. I think that if you look at the rules, a lot of folks just pass it on, like Trustee Newman said, and it never gets to the public. And I think we're a fairly diligent group, that if we see something that we think we need to highlight or bring out, we still have the ability to do so. And so I think we're in a good place. And I think it's also given us the opportunity over the last year or so to have gone through this process. We've gone through a bunch of these things. And so there's a more comfort level to then go ahead and move this off to the consent. And we didn't do it at 90 miles an hour. And I think that was also important. Trustee Brown.
So one thing I don't want to miss is thanking Trustee Marks for the concern for the public with her expressed interest there.
All right, with that said, seeing no more lights, questions or comments from the public? Back to the board for comments. Looking for a motion to approve B7 to place approval of action on proposal to put ARs directly in the consent on the board agenda. So, looking for a motion. I'll second it since it was sort of my idea and I don't get to do that a lot anymore. So all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed?
Nay.
Passes 6-1. Trustee Marks is the no vote. That moves us on to B8. Approval of the first reading of a proposed draft of board policy and AR 6174, Education for English Learners, and deletion of current MCS BPAR 6174, Alternative Education Programs. Good evening. Welcome.
Good evening, President, Mr. Walker, trustees, Superintendent Dr. Noguchi, cabinet members, and community. And tonight we bring you the first reading of the proposed draft changes of AR and BP policies 6174. These proposed drafts include revisions that bring us into alignment with updates in language to match gamut. And I'm open for questions.
Oh my God. Trustee Marks.
I had a question on AR 6174A. So at the bottom of the page, it just said that the superintendent designee shall notify parents and guardians of how to access their child's results on the ELPAC within 30 calendar days. So I'm just asking if that's a reasonable amount of time following receipt of the results of the test contractor, or if the results are received from the test contractor after the last day of instruction for the school year within 15 working days of the start of the next school year. So that seemed reasonable because it's before the next school year, but the 30 days, is that reasonable for students, for the superintendent or designee to notify the parents and how to access their child's results? Because I didn't know what our practice is right now and how this would, because this is a brand new policy. It had the same number before, but it was called alternative education. And so this is a brand new policy for us. And so I just wanted to see if this timeline was correct, or should it be a longer timeline to inform parents?
I can address that. Actually, we've had these two policies in place, but they are replacing pre-existing 6174. That's we're asking you to strike that as redundant because currently the language in 6174 when it comes to alt ed is actually covered by other language and other ARs and BPs that are matched to gamut. So it was about renumbering things to align them. 6174 BP, 6174 and AR when it comes 6174 when it comes to education for English learners have been in existing concurrent to the other one.
Okay, all right, because the numbers were the same,
Yes.
and it said completely different information on the one that we have for the one that's being deleted.
Yes,
So,
I
yes.
understand.
So,
And
okay.
that paragraph that you did cite in the AR was, there were no changes to the 30 calendar days.
Okay.
The only addition in language was of how to access. Those are the three words that we changed in that paragraph. So the 30 calendar days was a pre-existing policy that we follow.
Okay,
It's federal and state law too.
right, okay.
They have the first month.
So I was going to echo that, is that if you were paying attention at the beginning of the year, as a parent, you got notified how to access your students' records now, which is sort of new this year. In some ways made me feel good, in other ways not, because if you forget and you're now accessing it through a computer program, which is I guess what we're doing, it's different than getting it in the mail. And so my take on this change is it just lines us up with what's being expected from the state. Probably mimics exactly what's going on with SBAC, because that was the parent notification that went out earlier this year to parents, is that you're not necessarily going to get this notification in the mail anymore. This is how you access it. And if memory serves me correct, it was through our website that you can get to it, or we had tools to help them access that data. So that doesn't surprise me, and it tracks with what the state's doing with everything else. Any other questions or comments?
That makes sense. I mean, I can
Yes.
hear you on that for the English, for students who speak English and are fluent in English. This
Yep.
is right, the English learners. And I can see that if we were going to contact them or let them know this information in their own language, that there might be some other things that might be cumbersome to let them know within 30 days to find a translator that could contact them. So I just want to make sure this was the amount of time that we could do it in. Okay.
Mrs. Marks, I want to make sure that you know, Ms. Moda just responded and said that they absolutely are. And in addition, even though that's the bar, we still mail it home, and we mail it home in their language.
See, look what happens if you express a concern. You get text messages telling me to stop worrying about the computer. Outstanding.
We worried about the same thing, so that's why.
No, it just
We
does,
wanted to
'cause
make sure the letters went home.
There's a communication breakdown. It doesn't take much. And you get these big stacks of paper at the beginning of the year. Do you know or don't you? With that being said, no other lights. Out to the public for questions or comment. Seeing no questions or comments, public, back to the board for comment. Seeing none, looking for a motion to approve BP and AR 6174, first reading, education for English learners. Trustee West, motion. Trustee Brown's a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Passes unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That gets us to 8 o'clock. It's a magical number right there for a board meeting.
Did that take care of the deletions as well?
Yes. What's not on here? Board members' requests for future agenda items.
Oh, wait, we didn't do the board policy.
We did.
we did. That was board policy and the AR.
Yes.
Okay, I did not realize that.
We're a very efficient crew here.
I guess you were more efficient than I thought, so if I had any questions, I'm in trouble.
There's a second reading. I don't know that necessarily have a board agenda item. I would be interested in knowing, and it can come through a communication back to the board, as we go into this board policy great, massive Mount Everest climb, there's been two previous times I've requested that we go to CSBA and have them come in and do the whole manual at one big swooping moment. And I'd be curious, given all the time and effort we've now put into this with Marla's work, all the senior directors, all the department heads, the board members have looked at this, what would that cost relative to 3 years and how many hours? Just cost benefit ratio. I mean, if it's $20,000 in 5 days, we've already committed to 2 Saturdays. Does there end up being a financial way to do this quicker, more efficient, gets it off the agenda, and we just chug through it? I don't know if it's possible. I've asked in the past, and it's never been picked up. I think they were premature asks because we weren't at this point as a board.
Well, I think that the study that CSBA does is it does exactly what we just did. It says, here's your policies, here's what we have, and this is the work that you need to do. So we just did that. So for them to go and do that, I don't know.
Well, I mean, but they would come in and do a workshop, and you would essentially adopt an entire policy manual at the end of a 4 or 5 day period. And that's what they help facilitate, is it's over and done in a week. And so that's what they have a program that does that. I believe Mr. Zierle at one point told me he'd been part of that, or maybe it was somebody else in a different district. He's nodding his head. It's just an idea that I floated in the past that never went anywhere because we weren't ready. And we hadn't gotten to that point at looking at the issue, staff, cabinet, senior directors. Is it cost-benefit analysis? Is it worth chunking through this in a week and writing a check or running it out for 3 years? We don't have to answer it tonight. It's just, I'm just curious what that would look like versus stringing something out across multiple years and weekends.
I think.
Or am I just
don't
misunderstanding?
understand. So I think I need to.
I'll
figure
come
out
back to you.
what- okay.
I just think that we're at a point we can at least discuss, is it possible versus what we're talking about doing over years, because they do have a piece that will let you do that. And I'll leave it at that. With that being said, everybody's packed up looking for a motion to adjourn. Trustee Newman, second. Trustee Marks, meeting adjourned.